create something inside of Azure, it goes through the resource manager to get that work done under the covers and the subscriptions. So the first thing we have to do against ARM is we have to authenticate into the ARM, prove who we are, and then we can do our job. And what are the tools we have? We have the portal. That's what I did to create the virtual machine, the storage accounts. That's what I went into to work with inside of it. We also have the ability to leverage what is called Azure PowerShell. This will run on your local laptops and your clients. It can be a Windows system, a Linux system, or a Mac system to run those environments. If it has Mac, you have to have the .NET Core, but it allows us on our local systems to tell Azure to go do stuff, manage stuff, create things, work with it. We also have other tools. We have the Azure CLI, or the command line interface. This runs on top of a Windows, Linux, or Mac system on Bash or on top of PowerShell. It's another way we can work with Azure to manage and maintain that. We also have what is called the Cloud Shell. The Cloud Shell is in the portal. As a matter of fact, I brought it up. I didn't show it to you. It was there for us to use. In other words, I don't have to have the stuff loaded locally on my laptop. I can open Azure and get to the Cloud Shell. And I can open that up and run commands, whether they're PowerShell or Bash, or I can use the CLI. We also have an application. So if you go to your app stores, you can download the Azure app for another mobile experience to work with it. Now, folks, the reason I show you this, regardless of what tool you're going to be able to get into, and I don't, if you have a Mac laptop, a Linux laptop, or a Windows laptop, well, guess what? You can use any management tool. Any of them are open to games. What if you have an Android tablet? Well, you can't load tools on it, so you can't use Azure PowerShell locally, but you do have access to the portal, which means you do have access to the Cloud Shell. So pretty much everything we have, we can access the Cloud Shell. Or what if you have a phone? There's an app. Now, that app is generally a monitoring app. But guess what the app also has? Cloud Shell. Why do I tell you that? Because in the Cloud Shell, guess what? It's a browser environment with an editor that you can actually store and have a central repository for your scripts. Now let me show you the Cloud Shell real quick, and then we'll hop out of Module 2. So I'm going to hop into my portal here real quick, and I'm going to hop in my home area. Now inside of here, how do I get to my Cloud Shell? It's up here, this cute little icon. I know it's the PowerShell icon, and some people it's a square with, I don't know, a greater than sign and an underscore. I don't know. I always think like it's a duck sticking out its tongue. However you want to look. I don't know. There's lots of things you can use here for it. It's this icon. Just know this is the Cloud Shell. I'm going to bring the Cloud Shell up, and it's going to bring up my Cloud Shell. It brings a Bash up, which was my last one I went inside of it. Now, I don't know anything about Bash. I know it stands for Born Again Shell, which is a Linux environment. But what I do know is inside of here how to bring up what is called the Azure Command Line Interface, where I can interact with Azure. And I'm just going to type in the letters AZ in my shell and hit enter, and it actually will bring up all the different commands. Now, I always chuckle at Get this, Gary. I think this is a long lost art form, the bit art, like being able to type letters that are there. But notice I have CLI, and it gives me the information of what I can do. Now, how do I learn more about this? So I just want to give you a little bit of information here. So I'm going to learn more about this command called group. Group is how we manage resource groups with the CLI. And I'm just going to put AZ group / help. And it's going to actually bring up that information for me. It gives me the help. Well, I need to know more about this. Well, I can hit the up arrow. I have command remembrance like we do with most command line tools that we have. But I'm going to put in AZ group, and I'm going to type in the word create. That's one of the commands. I want to create a group with the command line interface. Inside of here, hit enter, and it shows me an example, the different variables I can put inside of it. Folks, the point I want to make is that when you're going to use CLI, every command begins with the letters AZ. And depending on what you want to work in, can you find out more help? -- help at the end, or -- help at the end, you can work with it. Now, if you're wondering, hey, Matt, which tool do I want to use when I get into the Azure environments? Really, I recommend learning CLI. And for your exams, you're going to want to know CLI, but you also want to learn Azure PowerShell. So to do that, let me switch over to my PowerShell environment. Now, folks, I'm not bragging. I've done a lot of work with PowerShell. I have a couple books on PowerShell, a Linda course, and things like that. But I don't tell you that for that, because I actually like CLI a little bit better, and you're going to see why. Now, PowerShell we still need because CLI is not quite fully full feature yet. But let me go ahead and just clear my screen out and let me type in. Every CLI command begins with what letters?
AZ.
AZ. So I'm just going to type in AZ, hit enter. And notice I get the same bit art. I get the same command structure. So folks, the reason I like CLI, I don't care if you have PowerShell or Bash. You can interact with Azure at the same command syntax. Same exact command I typed in Bash, is the same exact command I type in PowerShell. It's one of the huge advantages of learning the Bash or learning the CLI environment. Now, the last thing I want to show you here real quick is if you want to learn about Azure inside of here, if you want to learn more about Azure, first off, what can you do? In any Azure, in any PowerShell, I should say, want to learn more about PowerShell here, type in git command, and there'll be a test on this. Everybody got that? Okay, those are all the PowerShell commands that I can run, Azure PowerShell commands that I can use inside of it. Now, unlike CLI where I put the help at the end, if you want to learn more about PowerShell, a certain command, you can type in git help. And I know one of the commands that I could use to resize or work with a VM is called update AZVM. These are all called commandlets, git help. Commandlets are in kind of that verb-noun relationship. Get, set, start, restart, delete, followed by a noun, whatever you're trying to do, whatever object you're trying to manipulate. And so if I just say git help, update AZVM, it actually has built-in help for me to use and leverage. I can even have some switches like, hey, I want to have an example so I know what this looks like. Just type in examples, and it gives me that command line interface. Folks, I want you to understand that the tools are there. For this particular exam, know the differences and just a little bit about the tools. In real life, learn how to automate it. Garrett talked about the importance of leveraging the different types of technologies for repeatability. Templates are one way. Learning how to create scripts and modify and work with these scripts becomes another way that we can be consistent and repeatable with Azure. So from that standpoint, folks, you really want to learn how to use these languages. Now, if you're kind of like a free agent, you never really used any in the past, I'd recommend learning two. Learn the CLI. Learn how to use the CLI, how to find help, and then learn how to use PowerShell. If you only want to learn this because you're never ever going to real life because you're going to take the exam, learn PowerShell and learn CLI. You're going to see both of these examples in pretty much every exam you take from here on until forever with Microsoft. That's where we focus in that. Now, I mentioned with the exams past AZ900, you might have labs that'll give you tasks. We don't care how you get the task done. If you want to use the GUI, use the GUI. If you want to use Azure PowerShell, if you want to use CLI, you use whatever tool you're comfortable with. So in our exams, we don't really care which tool as long as you know how to do the task. So with that, that brings us to module